Good morning, everyone. We'll be getting started with our program in just a moment. We want to give people an opportunity to get in, but thank you for joining us for our Supplier Ready program. And again, we'll get started in just a moment. If you're just joining us, we will be getting underway in just a couple of moments. I want to let a few more people get into the room, and then we'll get started with Supplier Ready. We'll give it one more moment, and then we'll get underway. Well, thank you again. My name is Garrett Sheehan. I'm President and CEO of the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce and Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce. We're really happy to have you for Supplier Ready, getting into the supplier pipeline and preparing your business with a particular focus on small and diverse suppliers. Before we get underway, I want to thank all of our sponsors that we have for this event, in particular Key Bank. And this morning with us is Duke Johnson, Vice President and Branch Manager. And Duke, good morning, and thank you for having Key be a presenting sponsor of today's event.
Thank you, Garrett. As always, Key Bank appreciates the opportunity to support the Chamber and its members. We're happy to sponsor today's webinar and partner with the Chamber's Diversity and Inclusion Council, the Black Business Alliance, and the other New Haven companies that bring valuable information to the greater New Haven business community. Being able to do business as a supplier to the largest businesses in our area is a valuable growth opportunity for local minorities, women, and other diverse-owned businesses. These businesses are vital to the economic well-being of our local community, particularly those located in and serving underserved and underrepresented neighborhoods. They create jobs, support families, uplift neighborhoods, attract other business and community investment to the area, and overall strengthen our community. As a Key Bank branch manager here in Hamden, I work with businesses every day to provide guidance and customized solutions to meet their financial needs. And I'll be pleased to work with you too. Doing our part to support a thriving and growing business community is important to Key Bank. Thank you and enjoy the workshop.
Thank you, Duke. We appreciate it and appreciate the support of Key Bank. I want to also thank all of our other sponsors for today's event, including the Black Business Alliance, Yale University, Yale New Haven Health, and our Diversity and Inclusion Council, which is presented by C&H Insurance. And with us is Cecil Austin. Cecil is the co-chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Council and also the manager operator of C&H Insurance. So Cecil.
Thanks, Garrett. As the owner of C&H Insurance and the co-chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Council, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone that's participating in today's event. This is a really important discussion and really important to the community. Again, I just want to thank all participants, and I would encourage everyone that's listening to this webinar today to take time out and try to get involved with the Diversity and Inclusion Council with the Chamber. If you want to do that, just easily give the Chamber a call or shoot an email over to a Chamber representative and let them know that you have interest in joining the council so we can continue to put on more events just like this. Thanks, Garrett.
Thanks a lot, Cecil. And thank you to everyone who's on the council. Really has been one of our most active councils over the last year. Before we get to our speakers in just a moment, just want to thank again all of the investors in the Chamber. We start with UI, Southern Connecticut Gas and Connecticut Natural Gas, part of the Avangrid family, been tremendous supporters during the pandemic for us. And all of our investors who invest with us throughout the year, you see them on your screen right now, our premier investors, key investors, and then also our principal investors. It really, over the course of the last year, with their support, that we've been able to put on all of this content and programming, and continue to bring you new programs as well. So we're ready to get into it. Again, today is Supplier Ready, getting into the supplier pipeline with a focus on small and diverse suppliers. And I'm going to introduce our panel for you now. We have two panels today. So this is our first panel. Wendy Rollins, Strategic Sourcing Manager at Yale University. Vincent Matazzo, Director of Strategic Sourcing and Procurement Operations at Yale New Haven Health. And Meg Yedashevsky, Program Manager, Connecticut Department of Administrative Services Procurement Division. So Wendy, Vin, Meg, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. And we're going to get started with Wendy. We'll hear from each of the panelists, and then we'll go through some questions and take your questions in the chat as well. But we'll kick things off with Wendy. Good morning.
Fantastic. Good morning. Thank you so much for allowing me to participate in the panel. This is my first time representing Yale and our diversity efforts at the university. So you will see that both Vincent and Meg have far more mature programming than we do. However, we are in a position now where although Yale University has had supplier diversity efforts put forth in the past, and it's always been part of our mission, it's now a more structured program. And so there is a lot of information coming forward about supplier diversity, particularly for the community of New Haven. That's New Haven proper. We are, of course, are inclusive of all of the greater New Haven area, as well as going forward regionally and then globally. However, right now, our focus is on the city of New Haven. Let me tell you a little bit about what I do. I know that part of when presenting, you really want to make sure that you know your audience. So I want to make certain that I'm identifying those within or on this call that I can speak to. And first, I would like to address the minority suppliers within the New Haven community. I too am a New Haven resident, so I know a lot about the challenges that we've had in the past of being small businesses and becoming engaged at Yale University. However, there is a process that we go through. Right now, there is, I believe, Tamika put it in the link, there's a link to the procurement website at Yale. And that is your primary site to go to. That is where the vendor registration form resides. And we are, again, engaging New Haven proper businesses. And what we've been doing is having students reach out to those local suppliers who are currently engaged in the university. If you are on the call and you are not yet engaged with the university, and particularly a minority supplier, we would like for you to reach out to us. And what we're trying to do is to identify all of those local businesses that have an product or service that can be offered to the university. In many cases, we hear questions back from the New Haven community stating that I would love to do business with the university, but I'm not sure how to go about it. I would be more than welcome for you to contact me, and it's wendy.rollins@yale.edu. Reach out to me and we can begin that conversation. We are trying to understand who is in the New Haven area, what services or products they offer, and how they see themselves engaged at the university. Quite often, new suppliers come to the university and ask us, what is it that the university buys? Our items are very, very expensive. We buy everything from pens and pencils that the students use to the vehicles that the police officers drive around in. So there's quite a bit that we do engage in, and we would love to hear from you. I think that's enough for me for now. If there's more information, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, but I would like to give an opportunity to my colleagues on the call to also present their programs.
Great, thank you, Wendy, and we will come back to you. And again, I'll just reiterate this. I really appreciate having these three anchor institutions with us this morning. They've all made a commitment to doing more in diversifying their supplier list, and having conversations like this is a really good step forward. So now let me introduce Vin Matazzo with Yale New Haven Health. And Vin, I know we've had you on before. Actually, that was in person a couple of years ago, but talking about ways that suppliers can get into the hospital system.
Yeah, sure. Again, echo the comments. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Garrett, we're good?
Perfect.
Beautiful. Okay. So, for Yale New Haven Health, absolutely. We've been on a journey, right? I think similar to where Wendy had stated, the health system really from my perspective is in that outreach, that collaborate, the discover in a lot of our opportunities. And we're committed, and part of our mission and our values to the community that we serve, right? We are exactly that, as a healthcare entity that services New Haven and actually all of our anchor communities, right? From Westerly, Rhode Island, all the way to the border up to New York, but hyper-focused in the New Haven area for really the support of the purchases, the goods and services owned by minorities, women, disabled individuals, veterans, small business enterprises, and really have expanded a few of those categories. And it's really important that we really talk through the various partners throughout the health system that we employ and collaborate with our Office of Diversity Inclusion, the supply chain team that predominantly is managed by my staff with corporate supply chain, procurement, and strategic sourcing, and then even finance and accounting, right? So being able to make appropriate adjustments and garnishing opportunities within the community. And we've expanded our outreach in a couple of different ways this year, and with a few different programs through obviously the Chamber and a few other key partnership opportunities. And we do have and have spent a lot of time really looking at our initiatives in place and our data governance and our outreach. So making it more streamlined and efficient to understand the types of goods and services we're looking for, mentoring and creating those requirements and things like the tier tracking, the identification of those opportunities, and establishing those partnerships with additional advocacy and certification groups. It's also hyper important for us to understand those certification opportunities and make sure that, especially because we provide services to the community that directly affect, patient population and health, that we are also of paramount importance looking at the certifications and the ability to keep not only our partners, but our patients and our caregivers safe. So that vendor development and programming, the goals for inclusion, the bids and awards are really things we focused on very acutely this year. And we do have a corporate objective of hitting, 3, 4, and 5% of our aggregate spend, through what I'll call the small and local inclusion concerns. We're not without challenges, without having enough access to the MWBEs, really doing a lot more of the facilitating partnerships. And as everyone's aware, there was a pretty large strain on the healthcare institution during the pandemic. Some of that fog is kind of greatly lifting, but really looking at building the right capacity in those partnerships like today. So we take that very seriously. We're looking to the inclusion of really increasing our spend and our collaboration in many of those local programs. And again, I believe that there's a link not only to our supplier portal that gives some frequently asked questions, some of the requirements, and then potentially the opportunities. And we really would love to hear on, some of the concerns or potentially the opportunities to partner in ways that maybe we haven't been exposed to or haven't, done as much as we potentially could. But at the end of the day, please be aware that, we're looking to complement our organizational mission and put those resources and innovation into our diversity and inclusion programs as well. So again, want to reserve some time for our colleagues, but also wanted to make sure that those resources were provided at the end. So if we can ask Garrett and Jesse and the team, and Tamika, to kind of pass that out. Again, we had a great outreach when we were able to be in person at the Omni a few years ago. And I look forward to, a lot of those partnerships and reinvigorating those dialogues. So thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
Great. Thank you, Vin. And we'll come back with some more questions. And let me now turn to Meg with the state. And Meg, as we were talking yesterday, I know the state obviously has a lot of things that it buys across all of Connecticut as well. And you guys have some programs that you're trying to reinforce.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great, thanks. Well, that's wonderful. All right, hold on. We'll start this. Perfect. Well, thank you very much. And I echo what Wendy and Vincent has indicated. You know, it's events like this that as we travel across the state, one of the things that is my mission is to engage and diversify the number of vendors that we are doing business with at the state. As Wendy had mentioned and Vincent as well, the state, you know, we buy everything as well. So, you know, we're traveling around the state trying to engage as many companies that are located in Connecticut to entertain doing business with the state of Connecticut. I'm going to give you a very high level kind of opening remarks. And again, as the other presenters, we're here to answer any questions. But if you want to do business with the state, one of the things that a few things I want you to leave here with today is you have to register to become part of our system. In front of you on the screen today, you'll see that we do have a registration system, and it's a portal. And what this is it's a portal where any business that wants to do business with the state of Connecticut has to come in and register. And it allows us to obtain some information about your company. You'll see on the screen today that there's a lot of resources here for you to understand how to register. There's some guidebooks and there's some directions that we've put together over the course of the last few months to really assist the vendors when they're coming into this portal. So I ask you to take some time to do that. I know that these links will be shared with you throughout the presentation, as well as at the end of the presentation. You will always have my email, and as the presenters has mentioned, you know, I'm available. So if you need help or assistance, we'll get you through this process. But you do have to register in the CT source system. The other area I wanted to mention just in front of you today is we do have a bid portal and a contract board. And many of you on the call today are probably saying, well, that's great, I'm going to register, but I want to see what bids are out there for the state of Connecticut. And I want to see some of the contracts that are there currently so that I can gauge and look to see what's available in my industry. Again, the state of Connecticut is open and transparent, and we have this portal for you as the small business owner to come in and look at, and not only register to receive some bids that are out there, and you can receive those on a daily basis, but you can also look to see what the state is buying. So again, the takeaway here is please register as in the CT source portal. Anyone that's looking to do business with the state of Connecticut, that's really where you have to start. Again, the second thing you'll see on your screen in front of you today is registration for small minority-owned businesses. As we work to diversify our vendors that the state of Connecticut is doing business with, one of the missions out of my office is, again, to travel around the state to try to ensure that we educate vendors that we do have this small business certification program for the state of Connecticut. If you are a small business in the state of Connecticut and want to do business with the state, you would have to register in what you see in front of you is the BizNet system. My staff will work very closely with you to get into this system. It is a registration, and that'll allow you to fill out an online web-based application to get certified in the state of Connecticut as a small minority-owned business. So again, those that are on the line, the two takeaways is, one, if you want to do business with the state of Connecticut, you register with the CT source system, that overall portal. And then if you also want to get certified as a small minority-owned business, you register in the BizNet system, and staff will walk you through that and assist you with that application. In addition, you're going to hear from some presenters today that we partner with that will also help you with that application as well. I want to kind of walk you through a little bit because I know Wendy spoke a little bit about her mission at Yale University, as well as Vincent with the hospital. One of the things I wanted to just, again, really kind of stress is that the supplier diversity program here at the state of Connecticut, we have several layers to our program. Our mission is really to serve as primary liaisons for you, the small business owner. So the business owners that are on the call, please make sure you reach out to my office. We can also direct you to some of the resources that are out there that will assist you in some of your business development. We also travel around the state and do some of these outreach events to, again, encourage companies to get certified in the state of Connecticut's program. So please use us. And at the end of this presentation, again, my email will be there. I wanted to talk a little bit about, and again, kind of 10,000 feet, but those of you that are on the call that are small business owners and are located here in Connecticut and are looking to get certified in the state's program, please know that it is an online web-based application. It is completely paperless. We've moved to that kind of genre many years ago, and we did that because as small business owners, we understand that you're probably going to fill this application out in the wee hours of the morning. And I understand that because your operations and your business are there during the day. And so we've tried to keep the online web-based application because it's open 24 hours and you can come in and go out and fill out your application. So it is completely paperless and that's available to you. I want to just give you some general information about the certification process, because I think it's important for small business owners to know that I believe, as Wendy stated earlier, there's many different certifications. There's certifications at the federal level, there's certifications at the state level, there's certifications at the municipal level. So you as a business owner have to understand which certification is important for you as you're going after a procurement opportunity. I would encourage you, if you're looking to do business with the state of Connecticut, to look to get certified in the state's program. Therefore, I put on the screen in front of you some general information about the program. You must be Connecticut-based. This program is a Connecticut-based economic development program. So again, we're looking for your principal place of business to be in the state of Connecticut. We're also looking at your revenue, and currently it's $20 million in your most completed fiscal year. And then we're also looking to see that the company is independent. So those of you on the call today, please know that those are the standards as far as small business. And then if you're looking to get certified as a minority-owned business, the first thing we're going to ask you is, are you a Connecticut-based business? Do you meet that qualification as a small? And then we'll look to see that your company is 51% owned or more by a person of a protected class. And we come out to your business, and we're still doing that, albeit virtually right now, but we are coming out because one of the things we want to do is learn about the businesses. We're going to the small businesses, we're going to the small business or the small minority owned businesses, whether that's virtually or in person, hopefully soon, to understand your business and to hopefully connect you with some opportunities after we get you certified. So know that there's an engagement there with you and your company should you decide to get certified. The only other things I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about is, if you're on the call and you're thinking, I don't know if I should get certified, I don't know what the benefits are, I will tell you that the benefits to get certified in the state of Connecticut are vast. There's marketing opportunities for you, whether you're doing business with the state of Connecticut or some of the private entities on the line. I'm sure they're going to talk about how they look to see if you're certified in your home state. You will have access to some contracting opportunities that are set aside only for companies that hold that certification. And again, we have networking opportunities similar to what you are on the call today, and those would be available to you as well. And then the very last thing I wanted to talk about on the call today, because I will entertain some questions later, is once you get certified, I think it's important for small business owners to know that once you get certified, you do go out on an online directory that you see in front of you. And this is important because, again, not only do the state agencies utilize this directory and will find you and will engage you in some opportunities, the private entities also engage and look at this directory, as well as many of my colleagues in other states as well. So again, if you choose to get certified, it's not just a certification to hang on your wall, right? It's a certification that actually does something for the business owner, and we try to engage you to have other opportunities outside of the state opportunities as well. I think I'm just going to put up my contact information because I do know that we want to have some time for some direct questions. Again, I believe this will be in the chat. Our door is open to anyone that's on the line that's looking to either get certified in the state of Connecticut portal, the VAST portal, as well as the certification for small minority-owned businesses. My staff will work very closely with those that reach out via this outreach session. Thank you.
Thank you, Meg. And as Meg was mentioning, we do in the chat have the links to each of our panelists to their supplier portals, and we'll send those out to everyone after the program as well, so that everyone has an opportunity to see those. But again, you can go into the chat and click on the links as we're talking. What we're trying to do in this first panel is be very nuts and bolts transactional. So I'll go back to each of our panelists and just ask you on your actual applications, someone comes into your portal, they want to go through that. How long does it take to fill that out? What type of information should they be ready to have? What should they be doing ahead of time? What are some of the most difficult questions that you've seen businesses either stumble on or not be prepared to answer? And Wendy, I'll start with you and then go through each of our panelists.
Sure. So with the vendor application, it's actually a supplier registration process that we have in place now. So it's one form. It takes a minimum of, I would say, 5 minutes to complete, but the majority of the time will be spent on the description of your products and services. That's the most critical information for us. There is contact information that we request. In many cases, we recommend that it be a generic email address because of the turnover of many companies. We want to make certain that we have the contact information for the appropriate person to reach back out to. We also have a selection of the different classifications, business classifications. I think that's probably where some people are more challenged. And again, the form is available if it's not already online, because if this is a new site that they are updating, you can certainly reach out to wendy.rollins@yale.edu for the form itself.
Thanks. And Vin, similar question, the actual application itself, someone goes into the portal, what should they be prepared for?
Yeah, so we've leveraged a bunch of various technology. One of the things you'll see right when you click on the link in portal is our ERP requirements, our purchasing system, right, Infor. And it's a cloud-based solution. So some things are easier and some things are harder. And then once you identify truly as a supplier that has a business designation, as we call it, right, minority, women-owned, or a zip code in one of the 8 or 9 rural areas that we work with closely to our major healthcare hubs, that gets flagged differently for all the additional information, right? Those would be, to the prior point, for the state of Connecticut, the certifications. And then really understanding and being prepared to articulate your business offering. So very similar to Wendy, right? Very easy demographics: name, potential EIN, tax identification number, business address, primary contacts, website, those kinds of general opportunities. But we really also focus on understanding what services and offerings that you provide. So part of that listing, not only that, but the certifications that you hold. For example, if I'll just pick on accounting and have a CPA or specific designations, we look at that as well. Everything to purchase services and things for, janitorial, cleaning services, et cetera. So it's really important to have a dedicated strategy and to help us understand your service offerings and where you're situated, right? You might be based in New Haven, but could serve the larger state. You might just be interested in New Haven proper, right? So I think that's important because we are also a health system, that services the tri-state area. That being said, very similar, the link is pretty intuitive, but there's also resources there to then reach out. We have vendor relations supervisors, both in our clinical, so any medical supplies and products, and then non-clinical, which is everything from purchase services, HR, parking, valet, janitorial facilities, those types of things, and everything in between. So we're not there yet. We're on our journey of really I'd say enhancing like a mature program, but there's a lot of information that you could glean from the site. And then once you do register, we'll need to contact you. We've also, similarly to Wendy, been leveraging some interns and some student support in reaching out and understanding the synergies, or even potentially expanding. You might have done something for the healthcare system at one point in time and be in our database, but we're not aware of some of the current offerings or your capabilities. So I think the only add-on to everything that was previously stated is just also have that portfolio of offerings, and then any asks where you need support, that you can place into those comments or the special requirement section. And that can go anywhere from, desired payment terms all the way down to specific conditions in which you might like to be considered. So I'll kind of pause right there and be able to circle back in a moment for more questions if that's helpful.
Meg, before you go on, I just wanted to interrupt for 1 second. So I just wanted to make a clarification also with the university. What I have described is for a typical supplier to become engaged with the university. However, there is a facilities contractors application also available for those who are in that particular field. So that too has very basic questions to get you started, but then there's a complete application that they provide that determines whether that particular person is qualified to meet the requirements of the university.
Okay, Wendy, so just to be clear, it's two different pathways, whether you're doing facilities or general procurement for the university.
Correct. But reaching out to either one of those units will get you to the right place. We're not going to just let you sit in the black hole and or let your application sit there. We will definitely use that opportunity to engage the other person.
Good to know. Meg, similar question as far as the actual application and then maybe even the certification through the state. What is that going to take? What should you be prepared to do when you start that online application?
Sure. I guess I'll answer it in twofold. If you're looking to do business with the state and you're participating in a opportunity, those opportunities always have a contract. We call them contract specialists, always attached to that particular opportunity. So you can always engage that contract specialist with some questions if you're having difficulties or need some things answered specific about the bid or that's out on the street. So know that. And the second piece of that is I would just always tell the small business owners to always look at that portal to make sure that you're not missing any questions or answers that other vendors may have that may address some of your questions. Again, transparency in state government is there. So those of you that are participating in opportunities should follow that, and look at that portal. Secondly, to answer the question related to the small business application, as I mentioned, it is an online web-based application. So the way that system works is that it won't allow you to go to the next page if there's an error on the page. And so we did that. So hopefully at the end of the process, we've gotten a complete application that would reduce the time frame for us to have to go back and forth to the vendor. But we do have to ask specific questions after the application is loaded and submitted and the documents are there. So I would tell you, the question was asked, what was some of the challenges in the supplier diversity, the small business application? I would say that a lot of times vendors struggle with the principal place of business. The principal place of business must be in Connecticut. And sometimes we'll get applications where the companies are indicating that they have an office in Connecticut or they have a trailer in Connecticut because they're working on a construction site. And those seems to be some of the challenge where we'll have to define that and tell them that, no, your corporate office has to be here and your principal place of business, where the nucleus of your company is. So that to me would be some of the challenges that we find with some of the applications.
Great, and we'll get to some of the questions in the chat in just a moment. Staying kind of very nuts and bolts though for a moment, just talk us through the process. Once someone has found a service that they can provide that your institutions are looking for, what happens next? How does that process go? Is there a lot of communication? I'm sure there's people on the line today who think, oh, they've already know who they're going to select. It's people they've worked with in the past. So just give us a little insight on what happens to actually make those selections of who gets a contract.
So I can.
Yeah, great.
Sure. So I can speak to the general procurement area, not so much facilities, because I know that they have their own process that they walk through. And Sal Garibaldi is the person who is typically the recipient of those applications. However, for central procurement, what we do, because Yale is such a decentralized purchasing, so that means that the purchasing selection is done in the unit. So many of our departments have responsibility and access to our online ordering system, so they can select those suppliers that are already set up within our system. So that's typically who they go to. If they are looking to go to an outside provider who is not already set up, and I believe this is where your question is deriving from it, Garrett, what they do is they contact the department, and the supplier have the conversation. The department will contact purchasing services. We will then vet that vendor. So we in purchasing will reach out to that supplier, and you'll hear me use that word interchangeably. I do apologize. In the past, we've called small businesses vendors, and now we call them suppliers. So they're one and the same, in my mind anyway. So we would then, as procurement or purchasing services, would reach out to the supplier to have the conversation to see exactly what it is that they can offer to the university. If it's a simple widget, then that's fine. We can make that one-time purchase. If it's more of an offering of their services and how they can see themselves further engaged with the university, that's the conversations that I enjoy having, because that helps me to think outside of the box on how exactly I can get this vendor or supplier engaged with the university at a university-wide level, not just a department level. So it's really important, as you had stated, about the how detailed their value statement is. They're basically what they're offering to the university. But it is definitely a conversation that is had between procurement and the supplier.
And I'll come back to you with the same question, just of what is the process when someone bids on a particular project that they find on your portal there?
Is that for me?
I was sending it to Vin.
Yep, sure. So we can articulate that as well. So Yale New Haven Health publishes a rolling 18-month bid calendar, and what ends up happening is all of our strategic projects or services, whether it's for supplies or support entities, is out there. We do need a project sponsor. So again, to be considered, you need to be registered and fully credentialed into the portal that we discussed, very similar to, I believe, Meg's process. We obviously rely on the state for those guidance and adhere to those standards in terms of certification. And then there really is a due diligence review, right? That's done. So is the supplier capable? Are there specific requirements that need to be met for whatever the opportunity or the product line that's offered? And then ultimately, if you're in the database, because we do have our supplier diversity and local inclusion policy, we do a specific amount of outreach in targeted categories. So if we know, for example, because you've registered and you're an electrician, and there's an opportunity to do that, sometimes we'll also include you in bids from what we call our tier 1 or tier 2 suppliers, right? A great example is our office supplies partnership with WB Mason, our facilities and supply, what we call MRO with Granger, right? Those partners are acting on behalf of Yale New Haven because they support us, but they also issue bids through their platforms and opportunities to service Yale New Haven. Because there might need to be some type of opportunity or overarching infrastructure that they have that might not be available, from the list of services. But typically, A, it starts with that awareness. B, it's that synergy or that alignment on the rolling 18-month pipeline. And then we'll be in touch to help and work through, requirements of the bid should we determine that, you're a service or a person of interest, if you will. So again, I think being in that portal, being very clear in the services that you articulate just really helps us align to that bid calendar. And then we reach out and really have those kind of interview and conversations to ensure that A, you're a proper fit, and B, that the scope of services or the RFP, if you will, request for proposal. Sometimes it's just a request for information. Hey, we're looking to understand who does what types of services. So there might be some solicitations in that regard. And then the last piece is also through some of our third-party partners. We are a member of Vizient, which was one of the nation's largest group purchasing organizations, as well as leverage an outfit called Supplier Gateway. And there are many bids and opportunities that are posted there. So vicariously, you might pick up a bid for maybe Hartford Health, right, through being aware in the GPO or the supplier diversity portal. It might not be for Yale New Haven, but because you interacted or solicited on that bid, we'll then be aware when a similar opportunity becomes available for Yale New Haven Health or affiliates. So kind of a very complex system, but again, much to Wendy and to Meg's point, it's being registered and being aware. So hopefully that's helpful.
Meg, similar question, just what happens once a bid is put in?
Yeah, sure. So the state of Connecticut goes out to bid a couple different ways, and it's either an RFP, a request for proposal, a bid, which is price driven, or it could be, as Vincent, an RFI, where you're just looking for some information. So the procurement process is pretty straightforward. Companies would have to complete that bid and fill it out and provide every document that is asked for, so it's a complete bid. You may see some of these either RFPs or requests for proposals that have some language in there that talk about the set-aside program or the small business program. And in some opportunities, there's carve-outs, if you will, where a percentage of that particular opportunity may be set aside for companies that hold certifications. So there's some opportunities there as well. Yeah, you have to look at the state portal. That's where everything is posted, and it's open and transparent. So if you're looking to see what opportunities are out there, you can go to the bid board and literally look to see what opportunities are out there. And you can narrow your scope or your search for the bids that are out there in whatever service or products that you provide, as well as I mentioned earlier, the 169 municipalities also post on that bid board. So if you're looking for opportunities, you can either look at the state level or the municipal level. So really, everything is driven through that portal.
Great. Want to move to something that I know all three of you have talked at different levels, but just understand a little bit more about how it works is the outreach and engagement. I know we've talked about if you're a supplier, reach out, get in touch. I also know in just talking with Meg and understanding some of the state concerns, there's a limit to those conversations because they can't show favoritism as well. We can all imagine a headline on a newspaper of someone a bid that was more expensive got pushed up, obviously. So there's some dangers out there as well. But what I've heard from all three of you is this is a conversation, and you want to be talking with people to have them in a good spot. So, Meg, maybe I'll start with you. And what does outreach look like? How do people start getting involved, and what kind of advice and support can the state provide to a potential supplier?
Sure. Outreach starts with, companies can call and ask, through my office, if they're a small business and want to understand the process. We'll walk them through that portal. We'll tell them how to engage and look. A lot of this is driven by the company. They have to go and look at the opportunities that are either posted on the portal. And you can also look to see what's coming up, right? So you can see, you can actually look at contracts that are expiring. So a company can be proactive and look to see, well, this contract is expiring in, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. So those are some of the things that we can educate and let the vendors or the suppliers know that they can do on their own. Outreach, things like this and opportunities like this. My office is open to talk to any organization that has a group of small businesses that are looking to do business with the state. We'll travel, whether it's virtual or, hopefully, as I said earlier, in person, to engage those companies, to let them know that the state wants to do business, and then the vendor itself would then have to engage that opportunity and whether it's a bid for price and put their numbers in, or if it's RFP and there's other factors that are included. I think Wendy and Vincent both said the same thing, is the most important thing is the vendor has to provide a very good capability statement so that as we're engaging the company, we can direct them into the opportunities that best fit their organization. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Meg. And Vin and Wendy, same question about outreach and how you can pull suppliers to support them to be able to fulfill on to these contracts that are available.
Sure. Wendy, did you want me to lead in first, or would you like to go?
You're fine. I'll follow your
Ladies,
lead.
try to be a gentleman. So no, I think it's important. There's a lot to actually unpack. We talked a little earlier, both Yale University and Yale New Haven Health leverage Vizient, a group purchasing organization, and there's a plethora of resources there. So in addition, obviously, to the state, which we would be compliant to for Meg and everything she echoed with the certifications, there's a lot of resources on both Supplier Gateway, who's our vendor qualification and registration partner, as well as the group purchasing organization. We follow an ABA, an American Bar Association, the lawyer and legalese process of procurement standards. So it means that we formally ascertain who's a qualified or identified vendor. We do a bit of due diligence on know your seller or your buyer, right? So D&B ratings, any criminal findings or business lawsuits, things in that regard. There's a business check once you're registered. Obviously, having a state tax identification number, all those things in advance as part of the due diligence and screening process to become have a vendor number at Yale New Haven Health, which again doesn't mean you'll get business, but means that you're ready to bid, right? And I think there's a lot of resources that our team can provide, as well as our group purchasing organization on just what those baseline requirements are. And then very aptly being able to go in and then look at those certifications. And then really, again, just positioning your business and your offerings appropriately, right? Whether it's even products and services, could even be something as simple as catering and those opportunities, all the way to selecting payment and those types of, I'll call it bid requirements, right? Whether it's an extremely large system-wide project or something very specific like a renovation of a particular unit in a New Haven-based hospital or clinic. So I think all of that's very important. It's managed by the American Bar Association standard, so it means that there will be a formal solicitation. There's a quiet period. There are terms and conditions that you can see right on our website that you'll need to review and be familiar with. And then we do adhere to a pretty strict bid process. So much like Meg had stated, there are certain awards that have criteria, many things from insurance and many things that are very open sourced and simple. So it really depends on the type of bid or services. And then there's a lot of requirements specifically from local, state, and federal regulatory. If you're doing something that interacts with patients, whether that be like interpreter services, all the way down to even providing like face shields or masks, right? That would potentially affect staff or patients, to various standards. So again, I think, the education really is being familiar with your business and the standards that they're governed in. And then my staff, there's a pretty large amount of procurement folks, depending on, the specific opportunity that get engaged and are trained and connected to help support you and educate and train. So the GPO, Supplier Gateway, and our Yale New Haven staff. And that really is kind of our trident or our three-pronged approach. So if there's no other questions, Wendy, I think you're fairly similar, but I'll kick that over to you for the university.
So although we're fairly similar to the hospital, we also kind of think outside of the box as far as outreach is concerned. It's basically, so we do much of what Vincent just detailed. However, we are at a point where we have 7 sourcing managers, and because we're a private institution, we typically will engage in an RFP at a certain level, a certain threshold. So it's not everything across the board that we go out to bid on. It's a certain threshold. Once we do that, it's up to our team in sourcing to identify viable candidates or suppliers to participate in that bid. So because the suppliers are obviously expert in their fields, we need for them to help us to understand how they would engage the university. So if perhaps let's see, I'm trying to think of a bid that we just recently went out to on. Okay, so for the Peabody Museum, we have a number of exhibits. That everyone who's in the New Haven area probably is aware that the Peabody Museum is going under major renovations right now. So we're looking for everything that that project will take, right? So if you feel that you offer goods or services that can accommodate the needs of that particular unit, then we need to hear from you. We need to know who you are, because we within sourcing are the ones who are identifying those potential candidates to participate in the bid. So it's really important for you to reach out to the sourcing department, procurement, to help them to help us to better understand how you could possibly be engaged with the university. We do that. We do also, we participate in many of these types of calls, these networking opportunities, as Meg had mentioned. But when I look to find a particular supplier that I'm not familiar with, I will go to the state website, go to Meg's website. So if you're on that list, then the potential there is greater because I'll know that these are the products or services that you provide. I also, the university is also engaged with the Greater New England Minority Supplier Diversity Council, which you'll hear from Peter shortly. But there's a number of organizations, third-party certifying organizations such as WeBank as well, that we also look to for information about these diverse suppliers. That's how we're getting our information. And we would love to have those who are actually in the business to reach out to the university to introduce themselves.
Great. I'm going to get to questions in just one moment, but one last question I wanted to ask the panel. And I know we discussed this before. And what are some of the biggest challenges that you see for suppliers? And what are the challenges that you face to be able to have a more diverse supplier network?
I can jump in on that one. So I think A, it's outreach, B, it's understanding, and then C, it's really synergy. And by that, I mean synchronizing our definitions, right? So services that are provided, understanding the levels of awareness and support that we can provide. And then I think it's being creative in how we also partner, right? So we recognize that there's a lot going on and there's a lot in the community that we could probably do a lot better. The challenge is leveraging those partnerships like today and the GNE, MSDC, and many other councils and groups that really help us align those objectives and raise that awareness. So for us, it's also educating. I think, Wendy, to your point, we have multiple managers and service line leaders that also need to be educated, right? So I might have a pocket of understanding in one group that is very limited in another. So we're working internally to close some of those gaps, but it's partnerships, I think, like today, and partnerships with the appropriate state and local resources that help out. And then I'd love to hear ways that you might be aware of to better connect or place or participate our resources or our time so that it better serves everyone. So I think, that's kind of our approach. And we are leveraging some best practices from other institutions. We participate, and again, we mentioned like HAN, the Healthcare Anchor Network Strategy, which is a national group that focuses on a lot of those best practices. So we're also in a constant state of learning and growing as well.
Thanks, Ben. Wendy?
Mine is very similar, obviously, that as Vincent's, but I'd also state that we look to many of our peer institutions. We look to the Ivy Leagues to see if that particular supplier has done business with, someone similar to us, because working for higher education is very different from a corporate setting. And so if I see that this particular business has had experience in providing services or products to institutions similar to myself, then I will be more apt to reach out and understand that or be more comfortable in selecting them as participating in one of our opportunities.
And Wendy, just quick follow-up on that. One of the things you and I discussed too, there's, small businesses may face the insurance requirements or other certifications that they may not have. There's some flexibility there, right?
There actually is, particularly for those small businesses in New Haven proper. Because we are focused on the supply diversity program within the New Haven proper, we want to do business with those suppliers that are local, right? We take over quite a bit of the New Haven area. So the university is looking to do more business with New Haven-based businesses in those particular areas. So typically, as Ben had mentioned, you have to have a sponsor. So to get a new supplier set up into Yale system, you typically need to have a sponsor within one of the departments that have that particular requirement or need. That's how that vendor setup is initiated. However, for those local to New Haven, we are looking to relax that particular requirement and say, okay, if you're a New Haven-based business, we will set you up into Yale's system. We just have to better understand how we can possibly utilize your services or products. Other things are like insurance requirements. So there's certain things that we can talk to, and it's done on an individual basis, not done across the board, but individually, if there's something that you are presenting or offering to the university that doesn't put the university at high risk, then we can talk to risk management about waiving those requirements for insurance or limiting them.
And Meg, similar question to you.
Yeah, I echo everything that was said. The only thing I would add to that for the state of Connecticut is, yes, outreach is critical for us because, again, trying to diversify the businesses we're doing business with, we need to educate the businesses on the procurement process so we're getting more bidders on the opportunities. Instead of 1 or 2 or 3, we need 10, 11, 12 competition. So education is critical. The other area I believe as well, leveraging best practices. The state of Connecticut is looking at the National Association of State Procurement Officials and looking around states to see what they're doing and kind of leveraging some of those best practices. So we're starting to do a little bit more of that as well. And addressing some of the areas that have been brought to our attention where there is some barriers. Recently we heard payment was an issue, so there is some changes with that as far as prompt payment to small businesses. So as we hear some of the barriers and challenges, we're trying to address those within the parameters that we have in the procurement process.
Great. I'm looking at some of the questions here we have in the chat. Some of them are fairly specific. So on those, I'm definitely going to refer you to speak to each of the individuals. One thing we actually did discuss, I discussed with all the panelists, and this came from Peter, who we'll hear from in just a few moments, but you have other larger vendors. Are there opportunities for those vendors to be more diversified and work with maybe some of these smaller businesses? Maybe they can't take on a full contract with your institution, but is there a way to direct them to some of your other vendors?
So for at the university, we definitely encourage those partnerships between the smaller businesses and some of our prime vendors. Right now, we're looking into different ways of identifying opportunities and portioning off those that would likely go to a local provider, seeing where hospitality services is one of the areas that we're looking into right now. I'm thinking that why not buy local? We want those local fresh produce to come from, local. So we have engaged with those decision makers within hospitality to see how best that can be done. But one of the things through our supplier diversity program that we're looking to do is to make those connections, to see if there are prime vendors who are currently bidding on an opportunity. If you're utilizing a service of a local vendor or partnering in any way with a local vendor, then that would weigh a bit heavier on our checklist.
Meg or Ben?
And I think to that end too, so Peter has been a great partner, and Yale New Haven Health does sit on the GNME MSDC. Sorry, Peter, I get that one all the time. But I think, that's an important part in terms of, like we mentioned, WV Mason, who's our contracted office supplies partner. they have a supplier diversity and local inclusion program, Granger, those large companies. So as we're aware, and we do some of that research, even Robert Half Technology, who does a lot of our active recruiting, right, for local temp and support, we're very hyper-focused on that. We've spent a lot of time developing a strategy around our data, and the past couple of months, past 6 or so, have really jumped into that. And so again, registering and helping us understand that you're out there and being on the state and the Yale portal, as well as Yale New Haven Health, is helpful. The other piece also is looking at those bid calendars, saying, hey, we recognize that's a pretty large bid, but we fit the bill, but we're very specific to a geography or maybe one of the contemplated services. So again, the more that we can do matchmaking in that profile, we do look at our tier 1 and 2 opportunities, as well as with our capital partners. There's a lot that happens with Turner Construction, right, where they have subs and sub opportunities. We need a larger outfit for the greater project scope or need, but it doesn't mean that they can't contract local plumbing, glass cutters, electricians, trades, things in that regard. And there are requirements we flow down and specific metrics. Right now, we've done a fairly decent job, but not as inclusive as we could be with passing that information down, but more and more of that awareness and I think identification is coming. So again, it really just comes down to being aware and developing those relationships, registering in the portal, and then participating in councils like this, as well as many of the other Chamber of Commerce's where the Yale New Haven operates, whether that's New London, whether that's Bridgeport. You could be a New Haven-based business, right, that supports Bridgeport Hospital. We try to bid as a system where it makes sense, but there will be specific bids, for those locations as well. So again, it's that awareness and I think outreach.
Meg,
I
I'll
think
let you close
also,
it. Oh, go ahead, Wendy.
I apologize. I just wanted to mention that, as I said, the state of Connecticut and the hospital have much more robust programs than the university does at the moment. However, we have had successes in those partnering situations. One that I'd like to highlight is actually with one of our strategic suppliers, University Loft, who provided the dormitory furniture in the past. Well, we've had a long-standing relationship with them. We introduced them to a local provider, 212 Exchange Street, and they use them because they use toolless installation. And so they use that particular company. They train the company on how to do this. They train the company on their back-end process, their bidding, as well as their pricing and providing. They just provided them with a lot of information to help develop their business that would make it more acceptable to the university and the university systems to be able to engage that smaller business into larger projects. With that said, we not only utilize that particular supplier, we also highlighted that prime vendor. So we began to blast the Yale community with information about University Loft and the quality of their products as well, letting them know that they had engaged in this particular development of the small business. So those particular things, whether it's that type of relationship or if it's hiring from the New Haven community, we're trying to make the Yale University community more aware of these success stories so that we can begin to utilize these small businesses and people will become more confident in the quality that they're providing.
That's great to hear, Wendy. And Meg, I'll give you the last word on speaking about this. And there was also a direct question to you about prompt payment.
Okay, great. Wendy, thanks for sharing that. That was interesting. As far as the state of Connecticut, quickly, construction, that's the general construction contractor or the GM. There's always terms and conditions of those particular project. So there's obviously that second tier sub that is part of that contract and is monitored for small business compliance. For goods and services, similar to my colleagues, the office supply contract, food service, we have many food service contracts, whether it's in the correctional facilities or some of the hospitals, and we have that buy local or that second tiering in those contracts. We've had some success with the IT staffing contract that is a larger company that is using many local small businesses because of the terms and conditions in that contract. One of the things that I think is important to mention is that the supplier diversity program is consciously housed within the procurement division so that the supplier diversity is not an afterthought, and we can talk to the contracting team before things go out on the street to see where it makes sense to put in some of these requirements so that we can follow through with the second tiering. As mentioned, sometimes the small business can't do the entire contract, but if you break out segments of that and give some percentages, you're growing that company and forging that partnership with that larger company. So we do have some success in that as well.
Great. And did you, Meg, on the prompt payment?
Sure. And
So
what was it? I
just
didn't know.
asking if you could share a little bit more on prompt payment, how that works.
Oh, sure. So I apologize. There is a, we've heard that for years where payment to, particularly to small businesses, was an issue, and particularly in the construction arena. So there, most recently, and I don't have the statute, but I can certainly get that to anybody that has questions on this. There was a statute or a bill that was passed that talked about prompt payment and allows that the small business that's certified must be paid within, it was 30 days, I believe it's 25 now, but I can get the specifics on that. But again, you know, that was something that we've heard for years, and through legislation, there was action taken on that, and there is the ability for that small business to be paid within a timely fashion.
Great. Well, I want to thank
Garrett,
Wendy, Meg, thank you so much for being on the call. We're not done yet, but this is really just the start of a conversation. I heard from all three of you that you've made some progress, but you have a lot more things that you're trying to accomplish as well. And here at the Chamber, we hope we can help be a facilitator to help bring you more businesses to help support your own pipeline. So thank you again for being so candid and sharing so much information with us this morning.
Thank you.
Great, thanks a lot. All right, so this is a two-part panel, and so we're going to move on to our second part of the program. Thank you again, everyone who's with us. So part of being supplier ready is preparing your business. So it's my pleasure to welcome in our next panel, and we have Jean Christensen, who's the founder of Jean Christensen Associates and also co-chair of our Diversity and Inclusion Council. Peter Hurst, President and CEO of the Greater New England Minority Supplier Development Council, and Joe Williams, the capital team lead for the Connecticut Small Business Development Center. And Jean, Peter, and Joe, thank you so much for taking your time to be with us. We appreciate you joining us. And we heard a lot just now. We know there's a lot more work that needs to occur to be able to have a much more flow of diverse small suppliers into the pipelines that we have here. But one of the things we wanted to talk about with you is how do businesses get themselves ready to be in a position to work with some of these institutions. And Jean, I'll start with you. I know that you've worked with many businesses in helping them diverse their vendor list and where they are able to sell their products. Why don't you start us off with some thoughts, and we'll get into some questions as well.
Hi, so good morning, and thank you everyone for having me on today's panel. So in terms of businesses getting ready for these opportunities, I think there's a couple of things that are important. And because small businesses have limited resources, right? Time is really valuable. So I think it's important for small businesses to kind of have a sense of who they want to engage with. You know, if they're looking to leverage their certification as a diverse supplier, that business needs to make a decision again around what businesses that they want to engage with and how their products and services align with those anchor institutions. So that transparency is important. I think there's two parts to this. Number one, the agencies, the government agencies, the anchor institutions that small businesses are looking to engage with they need to provide information about the products and services that they're outsourcing so that the vendors, when they are registering on these different portals, really have an understanding of, what the expectations are. I think once that information is available, then again, it's incumbent on the small business to kind of think about, is this a good fit? And if it is, take necessary steps to ensure that they can align with the expectations of that institution. And it could be anything from looking at insurance requirements, taking into consideration how we heard Meg talk about the prompt payment, but looking at, again, is this a good fit? Do I have the necessary resources? And really of a lot of the available services that are out there. I think that, because the way that we operate as small businesses, we're often in this vacuum. So really partnering with other organizations like Peters, like the SBDC, to take advantage of technical assistance that's available to help those companies that need assistance get procurement ready.
Thanks, Jane. Let me turn now to Peter Hurst. And Peter, we mentioned you a few times before actually even getting you on this morning, but I know you're working with a lot of the institutions we just spoke with, many more. It's a lot about forming partnerships and demystifying processes and making sure that these opportunities are actually available and not and are reachable and attainable. But tell us a little bit about what you do at the Greater New England Minority Supplier Development Council. I know we've talked about it before, but we have new people on the line, and then how we can bridge some of these gaps.
So before I answer your question, Gary, I just want to thank you, Vince, Meg, and Wendy, because this is a very important conversation. If you look at the Connecticut Economic Resource Center town profiles, New Haven really has a challenge that this can help address. The poverty rate is higher. The median household rate is lower than the county and the rest of the state. The unemployment rate is higher. The self-employment rate, which is an addition of the entrepreneurship, is lower than the county or the state. So I really want to applaud you for having this conversation. But to directly answer your question, minority businesses, like all businesses, need three things. They need contracts, they need intellectual capital, and by that I mean one-on-one assistance and subject matter training so that they can run their businesses better. And then they need access to financial capital, bank debt, subordinated debt, and equity capital. So we actually, in addition to certifying businesses as being minority owned and controlled, we provide the contacts that minority businesses need, not only with corporate partners. Yale New Haven is a partner, Yale University is a partner. We do that in a number of different ways. We have matchmakers, and matchmakers work very well in a virtual environment. And we're actually having a multi purchaser matchmaker coming up in July. We'll put the word out so everyone can be aware of it. We put the word out in terms of opportunities in our biweekly newsletter. We put the word out via social media so that our corporate partners, when they have opportunities to buy goods and services, they can let minority businesses know. The other thing that's really critical, and you touched on this, and this is something I think we need to really emphasize more. We have 270 minority-owned businesses we've certified across all 6 New England states with $2.9 billion in revenue. Of that 270, 112 have less than $1 million in revenue. So it may be a challenge for some of them to sell directly to our corporate partners, but they can sell to other minority-owned businesses. And to a point you raised, Garrett, minority-owned businesses of any size can sell to larger companies that are already part of our corporate partner supply chain. And we need to encourage that. The corporations that are making the procurement decisions, they're the client. So you can structure the procurement any way you want. You can say, I'm going to hire a company, either a large minority-owned company in California or a non-diverse company in California, but mandate to get that business that they have to hire minority-owned businesses in New Haven. That's certainly easy to do. And I would encourage that. The other thing we do that's really important is what we call, intellectual capital and access to financial capital. We provide free of charge, one-on-one consulting and subject matter training in 4 areas: financial management, marketing, strategic planning, and process improvement. And we're able to do that free of charge. We got a grant from the New Haven Foundation. I want to give them a big shout out. We have, 40% of our revenue comes from annual sponsorships, which are totally discretionary from not only our corporate members, but also from our larger minority-owned businesses. And we allocate 60 cents of every sponsorship dollar to what we call MBE development. And that's the one-on-one consulting and the subject matter training, so that we can provide not only those who are certified by us, but anyone who is self-certified, certified by the state of Connecticut, certified by any other entity. We want to help you get access to the financial management, the strategic planning, the marketing, the process improvement assistance at no cost, because that shouldn't be an obstacle. And finally, the access to capital. Last year we were very involved in helping our minority business partners get, access to PPP loans and EIDL loans. We have a lot of relationships with banks, with CDFIs. We actually have a private equity fund that we've certified that's down in Stamford, Connecticut. So we can help our minority businesses get access to all types of capital. And we encourage folks to take advantage of that so that you can grow and prosper. So even if you can't do business directly with folks like Yale New Haven or Yale University right now, you can still get business and get on the path of growth by doing business with other minority-owned businesses and doing business with larger, non-diverse contractors and vendors.
Thanks, Peter. Hey, Joe, good to see you. And Joe, we spent a lot of time over the last year talking about businesses being in a position to apply for PPP, and do they have all their documentation together? In some ways, this is a similar process. If you're going to work with one of these major institutions, you need to be able to show your financials, show your backup data, have your books in order and everything in order. What are some of the things that you work with businesses if they're looking to get into relationships with being a supplier for larger institutions? Is some of these basic things we're talking about, and then what other topics are important?
Yeah, Garrett, thanks for having me. There's definitely a few things. I think if I share my screen.
Yep, go right ahead.
Hopefully it works. Yeah, this one. Can you see my screen?
Yep, coming up, perfect.
Okay. So pretty much what the Small Business Development Center actually is a collaboration between the Small Business Administration, the Department of Economic Community Development, and the School of Business housed at UConn. And primarily there's 20 business advisors. We are the consultants of the government. The SBDC was created over 40 years ago by Congress and allocates about $135 million to have 1,400 business advisors throughout all 50 states actually help small businesses on the topics that we're actually talking about right now, in particular in procurement. As you may be aware, the federal government is actually the largest business unit in the world. We procure over $500 billion in procurement per year, and 23% of that is actually given to small business or through our set-aside program, through our 8A or our other minority programs that we actually have. But truly what we are talking about today, we're talking about how do you market yourself and get ready to do business, not only with the federal government, the state, as Meg and as Peter alluded to with other businesses, but what should you really do? And what we tend to do and talk about is the areas, if I can just move my, is really starting out with, you gotta prepare yourself, you have to register, you have to be certified, which I heard a lot about that. You have to know what type of marketing, because marketing to the government is very different than marketing to a regular business. You know, when you're working with a business, they're looking at ROI. We actually have presidential and congressional mandates that government agencies have to look at, and then the whole bidding process. And then when you look further down in preparing the contract, it's where do you get that information? You know, what we really get involved in, Peter alluded to, you know, are you prepared to actually do business? We use financial software, bottom line, our industrial CFO, looking at the back office, making sure you have the accounting ability to bid for the federal government. That is a big stickler with the federal government. If you are not yet certified or you don't have the capability, the accounting capability to deal with the requirements of the federal government, you're not even allowed to participate in that. So you really need to be business ready and have a business ready assessment, and we help you do that. And I heard someone talk about that, and one of the biggest things that a small business will need is a capability statement. This is the business profile of the company. This is the branding mechanism that the government finds you on the different systems. I'll talk a little about later about that. But this is talks about your marketing position, what product profile are you trying to do. You're looking at the effectiveness and your past performance. One big thing of the federal government, we look at past performance. You heard Wendy from Yale talking, she contacts other institutions of Ivy Leagues to see, have you worked for them? Are you part of the system? Do you understand the landscape that is going to be provided or you need to provide for them? And what I want to talk about here is just the registration of certain websites that you need to do. So the process of going to procure with the federal government starts with a Dun & Bradstreet number through Dun & Brad. Without a Dun & Bradstreet number, you cannot be placed on the SAM system, which is the federal registration system that you must register. You can come to our department, or you can go to another department called the Procurement Technical Assistance Program, we call PTAP. Then their sole job is to help market you to the federal government by placing you on the SAM system. Another area, when you're finding contracts, where do I get the bids? And you want to go to beta.sam.gov, or you want to go to the federalbizops.gov. And then there also is our other system. Also, where does this profile sit? How does the government find you? It's one thing to market to us, but how do we find you? And we have something called the Dynamic Small Business Search, which is under a US contracting registration.com. This is where your capability statement actually sits. So you make it, you register, you place it, and these are the type of areas that we actually look for. And marketing and selling is like anything else. In typical your daily life, when you're marketing to the federal government, we look at, do you find the niche? What is the competition? What are the influencers that are provided through you? Are you seeking out specialists like myself or the Women's Center, like Peter and his group down at GNC? And you have to understand that information is power. And your network is always going to equal your net worth. So we encourage, I heard Peter talk about his matchmaking event. This was a wonderful event. I know the University of Hartford has another one that the Women's Center puts on. These are the type of avenues that a small business needs to look for. This is the time that you're going to meet the actual buyers who are going to procure your goods and service. So you have to be able and to be aware about working with them. And the benefits of it and the barriers of it, it's very straightforward. The benefits is you know the spending capacity that you're looking for. You'll know the location, does it fit? You're going to see the decision maker, and they're very transparent. But one thing about the government has multi-layers to it. Sometimes if I want to bid with Treasury, the IRS, most people think the IRS does just taxes. Well, there's a multitude, there's thousands of offices and departments within the IRS and then through Treasury. And they do different things and they procure in different manners. So you really want to go through that. And there's the challenges of that because we have these subsets within government, the many layers that a business may go through. And we try to mitigate that or really help you navigate and put you on the right track so that you will have success. And one thing else that we just talk about in my department, everything you see on this screen, we are the ones that is free to you, your tax dollars at work, of helping you be more successful, more aware of what's going on, so we can partner you with to get you where you want to go to DAS, to the Department of Administrative Services. If you want to work with corporations and be certified through Peter's department, or you want to come to the federal government for what we do here. We provide that. If you want to get into exporting and things of that nature, we get into the financial and the fiscal well-being of your company, as well as securing dollars. I'm in charge of $57 million of procurement of working with debt and private equity for the state of Connecticut through my department with my team of 6 people. And so our sole mission is to help you help yourself. in essence. And that's what we are. The government wants to be known as the friendly government right now by the administration. We're reaching out. We applaud you. And I thank you, Garrett, for having this. And I think my contact information is on this slide. Feel free to register. We're here for you. Once again, thank you very much for having me, Garrett.
Thanks, Joe. Jean, let me turn back to you and something that's come up. Joe just mentioned it. We heard it from each of our panelists at the beginning, and that's the supplier statement, your statement of capabilities and your accomplishments. Can you talk us through a little bit about that? I'm sure there's a science, there's an art to how you write this. Many businesses can verbally talk to you about what they do and why they're great at it, but actually putting that down in writing sometimes can take on another form. And not everyone is a great writer or doesn't know how in writing to present themselves in a succinct way to get across their point. I'm sure you've come across businesses working on this.
Yes, I have. And I think the important thing to understand about capability statements is that it is a marketing tool. So, I think sometimes a lot of the messaging that small businesses receive is that, oh, you must have a capability statement. And I recommend to clients that, again, they're very strategic about thinking about what agencies, what corporations do they want to work with, and creating a document that really aligns with, their target audience. And the broader, bigger picture is to really have a plan. I recommend to clients that when they're thinking about pursuing government clients, when they're thinking about going after some of these large anchor institutions, that they look at their marketing strategy, again, as part of an overall plan. So a capability statement in and of itself is a standard document that really speaks to a company's capabilities. It talks about differentiators. It provides the company's information. It provides the company's commodity codes and its past performance. So there's a number of really good templates out there. And again, through organizations like Joe's and Peter's, there's free technical assistance so companies can actually sit with someone and go through it. My strongest recommendations are twofold. Again, number one, making sure that the business has done the homework. I think I see a capability statement very much in the same way that I would look at a resume, for example. And if you're looking for a job, you really tailor and customize that resume to reflect the position that you're looking to have. The second piece of advice I would have is, investing in that capability statement, because it speaks for your company when you can't. So you want to ensure that it's high quality, that it demonstrates your value proposition, and that it communicates what it is that you're looking to communicate to the buyer, so that they're interested and it elicits a call to action. So that buyer follows up with you, like, what are the next steps? So that's my recommendations on the capability statement.
Jean, just staying there on that, as we talked through this with the anchor institutions, I'm sure if you have not filled out these applications before, not gone on, seen what types of services they're looking for, the whole process can seem kind of daunting and how you actually just get started. I loved a lot of things we heard from the panelists about ways they're trying to lower some of the barriers and that, but what are, in what you see, what are some of the biggest barriers that still exist out there that we need to overcome or find alternative paths around?
I think that interestingly, we're at a point in our history where, companies are just becoming a lot more purposeful about, they want to engage with diverse suppliers. And I'm even hearing, more people want to engage with Black-owned businesses or brown. There's a conversation that's happening about being more purposeful about engagement. But unfortunately, when you go to the websites, the information, the process just hasn't changed, quite frankly, in over 4 decades. I think it's really difficult, and I'll speak for, my clients that really find going into these different portals challenging, because again, their time and resources are limited. So they don't have, and they're not, it's just not clear. So I think, creating that, I love the conversations around outreach. I love events like this where companies can get more information to make smart business decisions around whether or not it makes sense for them to pursue certain types of organizations as their clients. And again, to Peter's point, I think there's a lot of value. I can remember my first contract. I got my first contract as a subcontractor, and it's like riding on the express train. You not only is it about building capacity, but it really helps a business learn all of those different things that you would never, there's no class. It's almost like you have to be in the environment to have an understanding of the policies, the politics, and even how to navigate something like getting paid. So I think, as companies are looking to be more purposeful about engaging local and diverse suppliers, they really have to look at their processes to think about, is this the best way to engage with the small business community? And I also think that, that initiative really needs to start at the top of an organization. It's been my experience in working with a number of different supplier diversity groups that sometimes the person that's really trying to make these connections are, they're operating in a silo. Their supplier diversity initiatives are moving forward kind of separate and outside of the organization as a whole. And I think in order for it to be successful, it needs to be part of the culture of the organization.
Peter, Joe, give you an opportunity to jump in on there.
So let me just sort of reinforce 1000% the point Gene just made. I think if you think about the way corporate America works, if the C-suite and the board of directors embrace supplier diversity, they set goals, they make those goals part of metrics, make those metrics part of short-term and long-term incentive plans, and communicate that throughout the organization. Those who are actually trying to make supplier diversity successful have a better shot at doing so than if, to Gene's point, if the person in supplier diversity is operating on an island and trying to push this concept up. So I totally support Gene's point 1000%. The second point I would make is that, let's assume we're all family here. Minority businesses who are seeking business need to, put themselves in the shoes of the folks on the procurement side and think about how they look at capability statements, how they look at being contacted, because the companies that they're trying to get business from already have probably hundreds of thousands of incumbents that are doing business with them. So if you want to break in, you need to put yourself in a position, how do you distinguish yourself when they're looking at all of these incumbents, they're looking at other folks who want in their business, and make sure that whatever you put in your capability statement makes it clear what you do and makes it clear how you're different from anyone who's a potential competitor. For those who are on the procurement side, Gene made this point, again, I couldn't agree with it more because I'm a former entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs are challenged for time. They're challenged on resources. You can't assume that every RFP that a company puts out there hasn't already had someone selected who's going to get the business. That's how entrepreneurs think about RFPs. You wonder, is it worth the investment of time because a decision has already been made? And I'm challenged on how much time I have because every 2 weeks I got to be payroll. Every month I got to pay the rent. I got to pay insurance. So entrepreneurs don't get a check every 2 weeks. So they're challenged on resources. So those who are in the procurement space need to realize it's not just the process that's important, but entrepreneurs are looking for contracts because if they don't have contracts, they can't generate revenue. If they don't have revenue, they can't generate cash flow, net income. So we really need to, everyone in this conversation needs to some extent step outside of yourself and look at what the other party has to do to be effective and try to come up with processes, objectives, and responses so that if you're the entrepreneur looking to get a piece of business, make sure you put your best foot forward and making yourself known and making your company known. you might think it's appropriate to call someone every day or email them every day, but it's not, because the folks who are sitting in these procurement seats are busy people. So all you're doing is turning them off. And then for those who are in the procurement seat, you really need to realize that, I'll say this is admission against interest. One of the things we do is certify businesses as being minority only controlled, but the certification in and of itself doesn't cause contracts to rain down from the sky. It's just the first step. So those who are in the procurement, seat need to realize that, the entrepreneur is trying to generate traction for his or her business. They're trying to get contracts. They're trying to grow their business so that they can hire employees, so that they can pay taxes, so that they can help build local economies. But they're resource challenged. I don't care how large the company is. They don't have the same resources as the Yale New Haven Health System or Yale University. So we just need to keep that in mind. Look at this whole process and endeavor from the perspective of the other side. And I think we'll be more effective. But I'll start with I'll end with what I started with. Gene's point, I just think can't be emphasized enough. If we can, across this country, not just here in New Haven, but across this country, get the C-suite and boards of directors to realize that minority business development is a way to reduce the racial wealth gap, make communities stronger, generate more customers for them, then all of you folks who have participated today, Vince, Meg, Wendy, your jobs will be so much easier than if you're trying to push this idea up a hill.
And Joe, let's jump in on that. And also, Joe, a comment I heard from Gene and Peter as well. I mean, it almost really goes back to that business plan of what are you trying to accomplish with your business, being really focused on the supplier side about what you do and what you can do well.
I definitely echo what Gene and Peter has spoken, and everyone on the panel. It's a two-way street. It's going to take, a village to get everything done. We have to work collaboratively together, especially now. We're in a digital age. Things have definitely changed. But going to the thing you just talked about, Garrett, is the business plan. This is a living, breathing document, and we must treat it as such. When you look at everyday business and growing, and I echo what Peter's sentiments of, that weekly payroll, that bi-weekly payroll, paying the taxes, trying to grow, keep the lights on. It's tough. And we have to understand it's tough on both sides, that we have to understand that these type of conversations we need more of. But once we've had these conversations, what do we do next? I think from the business perspective of the business, the small business, know that there is a certification process that you must understand and work within. There's no way around that. And at the same time, from the procurement office on the supplier diversity side, we must understand and put ourselves in the shoes of that entrepreneur. If you've never been the entrepreneur, it's very difficult sometimes to understand or have the human side of aspect of saying, this person has to feed their family, but they're not getting a check like I may be. And I think about that when business is coming to my office, that I'm a government employee, I'm getting a check every 2 weeks. This person is worried about tomorrow. We've seen this in this pandemic. We talk about the PPP and the EIDL. We've done tons of this. And now we're doing the Shutters venue. And as of Monday, we're working on the restaurant revitalization, an industry that is totally decimated due to this pandemic, and how many businesses have to pivot. And what this business plan does is to help you think about the unknown. And we think about disaster, we think about floods and hurricanes, but no one would ever thought on this planet that we'd be in a global pandemic that would close down the world's economy, not just America's economy, but the world's economy. And we have to look forward to how are we going to get ourselves out of it? How are we going to be better prepared if we weren't prepared before it happened? Here's an opportunity to step back, evaluate the situation for future growth.
Joe, as we're talking about these contracts and opportunities, they're new opportunities for some businesses, and they may not be at the scale to be able to provide that, but maybe they have the expertise and they're ready to. when you're talking to businesses and they need to scale up, what's some of the advice that you give them? Because that's a challenge to be able to do that, to go from you have the expertise, but then do that on a large scale.
We use a tool called Growth Wheel. Growth Wheel has 20 different factors of a business operation on a daily basis. And we take the 3 top problems or the 3 top stumbling blocks. And even without building a business plan, doing something very formal, but just taking a step back as a small business and assessing more like a SWOT analysis. What are the true strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that a small business who wants to grow, who needs to scale? You know, Peter spoke about the 270 businesses, but a large majority of his membership do less than $1 million. So when they're looking to work with, say, a Fortune 500 company, they may not be ready to be the prime. But we know that we have the Mentor Project program, we have the 8A program, which will allow small businesses to scale by watching a bigger player, by piggybacking, if you will, to get the experience that they will be able to build that capability statement from past performance. You know, federal contracting, the majority of it, it's really done by past performance and what your industry classification code has classified you in. And one thing a small business must understand, we must look at, are we in the right classification when we're going to talk to that procurement officer, or we're looking on FedBids Op, is this the right opportunity for me? We have to understand where we are and then where we want to go. And so in small business coming to our office, we look at them from the vantage point of where they are and what their future plan or where they want to be. And with our guidance and help and advisement, we fill in the gaps so that we become the one-stop and become that partnership relationship for long-term growth and sustainability.
Thanks, Joe. And Gene, I'm just going to continue on that theme because we actually had a question in the chat about someone asking about they want to change their business model, add a different function, but it takes time to work through these processes. And so how do you advise businesses on this? Because even at the chamber, I know when we take something new on, that's one of our biggest challenges because we don't have that function going on, but we can see the value and what it will bring.
So, the way I feel about like scaling, I think that again, we're in a time where things have changed so dramatically, and we've seen businesses really pivot through the pandemic. I think businesses need to use the tools and resources that are available to them. I think that some of the old models about scale is really about hiring employees. And in some instances, especially for professional services, that does not necessarily have to be the case. I look at like when Joe's talking about the federal arena, for example, I see so many examples in the federal space where companies team, basically 2 or more companies come together and they combine their resources. And that is something that I don't see a lot of minority and women-owned businesses really taking advantage of. If you look at some of the largest infrastructure projects that is going on throughout the United States, there is not just one company that is facilitating the execution of that work. It is usually a group of companies that come together. We've seen examples throughout the pandemic where that happened, like Microsoft, for example, partnered with a logistics company. So I think, when you're stuck and you think, wow, how do I get from point A to point B? It's a matter of really looking at what resources are available to you. I think also technology, we've seen now that, there is so much that we can do. We can be more efficient through the use of technology. So I can't remember, I think it was Joe that mentioned it also, about really looking at your back office and looking at your operations to ensure that you are operating in the most efficient and effective way possible. And that is not something that a business can do on their own. You really need outside support, like we were talking about the growth wheel, or someone to kind of come into the business and really help the small business owner analyze, do that SWOT analysis, because when you're in it, you can only see what's right in front of you. So, I think teaming, subcontracting, joint venturing, being really innovative. When we talk about, working with more diverse suppliers, we're a small company ourselves, but everybody that we work with is a local business, It's part of the community. It's a diverse supplier. They're certified. So that's, and we have an ecosystem. I have, I have my base of employees, but I work with companies in multiple states because it's so easy for me to pick up the phone, call a friend in Massachusetts, for example, who can help me execute a contract that on my own, I would never be able to complete. So that's really important. I think on the other side of that, and something that we've seen very effective in the support that we provide to some of our larger clients, I'm working at the JFK International Airport. They have a multi-billion-dollar project there. And one of the things that they've done is really look at the landscape of business. And in certain cases, it makes sense to unbundle packages and to look at, okay, what is the availability of diverse suppliers in our area? And how can we, look at like an electrical package, for example, and instead of putting everything in that very large bid, say, you know what, maybe we'll source the light bulbs through a small local diverse supplier. Again, helping that business to gain access to the supply chain, learn what they need to learn. So I think there's multiple ways that businesses can scale, especially today with the availability of all the resources that we have in front of us.
Great, thanks. Peter, I wanted to ask you just about the certification process and walk people through it, as well as we heard there's the state certification process. We obviously are aware of the certification process that you have to offer. So are there multiple certifications that people should be looking for?
Unfortunately, there are. We have a process that's used by not only our council, but we're part of a national network that includes the National Minority Supplier Development Council and 22 other regional councils. And we all have the same process and criteria. The business has to be 51% owned and controlled by a qualifying minority individual. We get documents like tax returns, organizational documents like articles of incorporation bylaws. We look at who actually is running the business. We do a site visit. So at the end of the day, if we've certified someone as being minority under control, we have a high degree of certainty that they in fact are. In addition to certifying minority businesses on behalf of our corporate partners, we also cross-certify on behalf of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which means that if you're certified by the Greater New England Council, one of our 22 sister councils, it's almost a rubber stamp for you to become certified by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Because as I said earlier, certification in and of itself doesn't mean that contracts are going to start raining down from the sky. So this relationship we have with the Commonwealth really reduces the burden of getting certified in at least 2 places. So if you get certified with us, you can almost automatically get certified with the Commonwealth. If I could make one other point, Gary, just to piggyback on something Jean said about the teaming, I think she's really onto something there, because if you think about it, I'm a former investment banker, so there are 2 ways you can grow. You can grow organically, which is 1 contract at a time and 1 customer at a time, or you can grow inorganically. So in addition to teaming, you can take it a step further and look at mergers, acquisitions, and joint ventures. And that's something we can help you do. My colleague, who is the point person for what we call MBE development, is a former corporate and M&A lawyer. We're really encouraging folks to do that, because one of the things I'll throw out there, since Vince and Wendy are still on the line, one way you could change the landscape of minority business development overnight, not just in New Haven, but across the state, across the country, is if you look at the non-diverse vendor base of Yale New Haven Health System and Yale University, if those non-diverse vendors, when they're nearing retirement age, would consider selling to existing minority-owned companies or minority investor groups, you would change the landscape overnight. And there's capital out there. As I mentioned earlier, we've certified a private equity fund in Stanford. There are other private equity funds that have been certified by my sister councils. So I would just urge corporate America to think about that is a way to truly change the landscape, because that removes all issues, because you're already doing business with this non-diverse company. All you're doing is changing the ownership and control.
Thanks, Peter. Great point. I'll throw this question out to everyone. We were talking a lot about anchor institutions, and this is pretty, maybe this is too basic of a question, but really expanding your base of all businesses that you work with as well. The anchor institutions are one huge opportunity, but how do you kind of grow your network of business? And again, that's kind of what we all do. We're all in business, so it's very basic, but just a thought to working with other small businesses, other medium-sized businesses that you have not worked with, and also the fact that they don't have maybe as structured a system, and there's an opportunity to engage them more into having a more diverse supply base and base of vendors that they work with. Anyone want to jump in on that?
So let me just start if I could. I ran a company in Connecticut for about 13 years, minority owned. It was certified by the council. We had a very active MBE to MBE initiative where we looked at it very simply. We're buying goods and services from someone. Why not buy it from a minority owned business? I think all minority owned businesses should think like that, especially the larger ones. Since 2017, we've had an MBE to MBE initiative where we proactively try to match larger minority-owned companies buying goods and services from smaller minority-owned companies, and it's gotten a lot of traction. There are people who are on this webinar today I know have benefited from those kinds of initiatives. We just need to think more about that. And just like we have matchmakers for our corporate partners and our MBEs, we have MBE to MBE matchmakers. So I would say, if you really want to move the needle dramatically, all minority-owned companies, whether you're certified by us or not, you should think about buying goods and services from other minority-owned companies. That alone would have a dramatically positive impact on the growth and prosperity of MBEs.
And Gene, do you think it's more networking opportunities as well as we talk about just even all small businesses that may not have they're not a corporation, they don't have a directive to have a more diverse supplier base, but there's lots of MBEs that they are not aware of, businesses they haven't worked with in the past that could be a great opportunity.
Yeah, so I think, networking is definitely a positive, and I love the idea of just having, especially now, the pandemic, that's one thing that it created for us, because there's just a lot more networking. But I want to just address the small business side of this for a second, because we have worked with tens of thousands of small businesses. And what I have found is that most of us as small businesses tend to kind of really focus on the fire of the day, because as Peter pointed out, and I think as Joe pointed out, a lot of small businesses really have limited resources. So if a company is really looking to grow, again, to Joe's point, you got to have that business plan. There's got to be a strategy, but there also has to be a commitment to marketing, because you can do all the networking in the world, but if you don't have a strategy, if you don't, have that capability statement ready, if you don't have a team member that's going to help you follow up to, on all the connections you made today, on registering on the portals that you need to register, that's going to go nowhere. So, in our company, we ended up creating a day called Marketing Monday. And actually that for me as a small business, that's a Saturday. That's a couple of hours on a Saturday, really looking at who are my targets, what is it that I want to communicate, and really being strategic about managing my time so that I am able to engage with the companies that I want to do business with. So that is my strongest recommendation to the small businesses, to really carve out on your calendar time to really think about, that business plan. If you're saying this year I want to expand by $100,000, how is that going to happen? Who do I need to talk to? What is it that they need to see from me? And have a consistent methodology of marketing. Because what I find is that companies will tend to market when they don't have clients, then they'll get clients, and then they'll stop marketing. So it's like you have to start that process all over again. So I think, strongest recommendation is take a step back, look at the clients you want to bring on, create a strategy around it, and stay the course. What one of my partners says to me all the time, it's a numbers game. You know, if you're consistently making the calls, if you're consistently, consistent with your marketing efforts, you're going to get traction and close more deals.
Thanks, Jean. And Joe, before you answer on that, just let anyone know if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll get to those. But Joe?
No, I agree with everyone that everything has been said. And I think for all the businesses on this call, this is a first step. You know, being a member of the chamber is actually just the first step. I think, Peter, you brought some wonderful things that need to be brought up to the forefront when it comes to supply diversity in our country and beyond. One thing I've always heard when I talk to a lot of clients, it's the lack of opportunity, either lack of opportunity or lack of funding. And many small businesses, unfortunately, are undercapitalized many times. And I think the partnering of a stronger partner, a stronger minority partner, and you becoming the one. This is why I love the 8A program. I love the Protege program or the joint venture program the federal government has provided. I wish other corporates could take on that type of program where, like you said, Peter, most small businesses, once a person retires or they want to say, I'm out of this business, and they have children, it doesn't pass to the next generation, 50% of that. And to go to another generation, 80% of those businesses never go to this third generation. That is what's been a systemic problem within the minority community. That one, we haven't been able and have the capacity to build that capability. But then when we do, where do we pass it on? And so that's a lost lead, if you will. And it's like, Gene, you're starting from ground zero again. You're restarting all the time. So we're really not making headway as much as we could. Even though we have these set-asides, State of Connecticut has a set-aside program for minorities. The federal government has a set-aside of 33% that we're trying to achieve. But now, once we achieve that, are we really moving it down the road? Are we taking that little stone and beginning to roll down the mountain? And as it comes to take up, it gets bigger and bigger down the snow mountain. That's what we have to start to think, and we have to start to realize. I think these are the type of conversations, really addressing things head on and not sugarcoating them as they've been in the past. That we're really thinking about true strategies about wealth and equity attainment within our country.
Peter, do you have something you wanted to add there?
So I just want to echo the point Joe just made. We need to think about using minority business development to reduce the racial wealth gap. It's critically important. And we don't want to keep having these same conversations with our children and our grandchildren. So, it's great to talk about these things. If you think about after what happened in 2020 with George Floyd's untimely demise, there are all these statements from corporate America about supporting, equity and inclusion, supporting minority-owned businesses. If all of those statements really had meat behind them, we wouldn't have any issues today. But the reality is, talk is one thing, but we need to get things done. So I think we should use the fact that Garrett convened, these major buyers today and brought the three of us together to talk about how we all are helping minority-owned businesses. It's time to stop talking so much and start getting something done. So I would just stress that. You have a lot of resources here. You have interested corporations, as evidenced by the fact that, and interested government parties by the fact that Wendy, Vince, and Meg showed up. But let's stop talking and start doing, because it's time to get things done.
Great. Thank you, Peter. A great statement. Jean, Joe, we appreciate it. I want to thank again Vin, Meg, and also Wendy for being on here and in talking with them. I know one of the things we talked about is leadership from the top, and I know from talking to Wendy that the directive for her came from Peter Salovey. I know Marna Borgstrom, and when we hear Vin talk about the set numbers that they have now, and obviously Meg talked about the legislature, but what we can do at the chamber is amplify those voices, make sure people know about those statements, those directives, and also encourage others to get engaged. And to Peter's final point, how we take action. And actually, the businesses that are on the line today, we have many businesses, minority-owned businesses here at the Chamber, how we actually make those connections for you to these organizations that have joined us. Those are the things that we want to do going forward. And the last point I'll make is to Jean and to Cecil and Jesse Phillips, who's our staff person who helped pull all this together. We have a great diversity and inclusion council, and I think we can continue this conversation, really continue a task force effort to make these things happen. So we look forward to doing this. This is definitely not meant to be a one-off conversation today, many more steps to go. So again, thank you to KeyBank. Thank you to all of our sponsors. We appreciate it. And I do just want to let everyone know before we finish that we do have one more program coming up this week on Thursday. We want everyone to get your vaccine. So we're going to have a webinar on that at 10 a.m. on Thursday. That's the real pathway to economic recovery for us. And we're going to have Josh Jabal, the Chief Operating Officer from the state, who will be talking about the state's vaccination effort, where we stand. And then also we'll hear from a Yale New Haven Hospital medical professional to take your questions. If you have questions about how the vaccine works, concerns about it, we're going to address all of those on Thursday at 10 a.m. Again, my thanks to everyone who participated, and thank you for being a part of the program. One more program we do have on the 13th, digital marketing webinar, talking about new ways that you can do your marketing. You heard us discuss marketing here today, and we're going to talk about all of those new technologies and how to hire the right person. That'll be on the 13th. Thanks again, everyone.